said. I mean, these are girls who are 5, 6, 7 years old. I'm sure you saw the clips or the videos on Fox News, whatever it was, but really that visual, I can't even put into words how much it means to me. You see them there when they're in their jerseys, they have their big bows in their hair that they wear on the soccer field. And I'll tell you a little Trump story, of course. Look, we were briefed prior to this signing by Secret Service. They said, Trump, you cannot bring the girls up by you when you're signing this because it's a security breach. You know, there are certain protocols, but you can't do that.
Those little girls are dangerous.
Very. He says, okay, whatever. And he goes to sign it and he says, girls, come around. But again, I think it's one of the most iconic visuals that could possibly come from President Trump's presidency, and that's saying a lot considering this man has a mugshot. But all that to say, it's mind-blowing to me that a sitting U.S. president has to take time out of his day, has to use his executive actions and powers to declare that men should not and cannot participate in women's sports. Again, he signed an executive order on the first day, declaring there are only two sexes, male and female.
Amen.
Insane. And we clap for that. That's like clapping for someone saying the sky is blue. Insane.
Yeah, what's happened to America in such a short amount of time? It's almost like warp speed as we watch the nation just dive into darkness. And to see a man come where he calls it common sense, we see it as biblical values and restoring truth to the youth of America, that they don't have to be pummeled. Women don't have to be pummeled in their sports by a man. Share a little bit about, this is good, because we're backstage. So I told you that when they all know I was a swimmer, some do, and I know I look like a buoy, and she looks like a swimmer. And actually, we had the same events, and I was saying, did you have a pace song that you'd listen to when you'd swim? And you said, no, you quoted scripture. I said, I wasn't a believer back then. And I used the immigrant song from Led Zeppelin in my mind. Whenever I hear that song, my heart starts racing, and I feel like I go back 40 years to that point in time. But today, this day, 3 years ago, tell everybody what happened. Your heart should be racing right now.
It is. It's true what you say. While I am certainly, I call myself a swimmer now. Very much past tense swimmer. But even still, being, almost, I guess to the day, 3 years removed, you do still get that adrenaline rush, even just thinking about it. So 3 years ago today, in Atlanta, Georgia, was the national championships where Thomas and I ultimately raced against each other, ultimately where we would go on to tie in the women's 200-yard freestyle, and ultimately where we would go behind the awards podium where the NCAA official would look at both Thomas and myself. Again, this is a man standing at 6'4", a man whose feet took up the entire diving block, okay, like size 15 men's feet. A man who, from his side profile, when I looked over at the lane next to me prior to diving in, a man whose Adam's apple was visible from his side profile, and to be explicit, because again, it's what we had to see, a man whose bulge was visible in his women's swimsuit.
Hang on.
I know. It feels like it feels disgusting to say it out loud, but again, it's what we were subjected to. And that's not even to describe the locker room scene where, again, this was a fully naked, fully intact male who was completely undressed, inches away from where we as women were simultaneously fully undressed. But anyways, all of that happened 3 years ago, basically right here where we are today. So the timing, it feels very full circle, not to mention what else we saw today, where President Trump has now announced that the University of Pennsylvania, which is the university that this male athlete was able to compete for, 3 years on the men's team, and then switching his senior year to the women's team. President Trump has announced that he is withholding $175 million of federal funds.
What was Tom Thomas's rank with the men before he decided to jump over?
At best, he was ranked, I think, 462nd nationally in the men's division, so mediocre is generous. This was a less than average male swimmer competing at the Division I level to, again, just then 12 months later, would go on to win a national title in the women's division. Beating Olympians, beating American record holders. Again, these aren't scrubs. They're the most impressive and accomplished female swimmers this world has ever seen, and he beat them all by body lengths.
So not only is he a mediocre swimmer as a male, but he's also a coward.
Amen. That's right. That's right.
Riley, we were talking also just before we came out, and we said, 3 years ago, we were crawling out of a hole. I remember when you came out to Godspeak, and Charlie and I remember, after the election had been lost, we were in churches like Lompoc, California. We would drive for hours, just anyone for an opportunity to come and hear what we have to say. We didn't have a lot of friends. And to be a Trump supporter after the 2020 election, you were a penny looking for change. And you were in that. And yet, with Charlie, it almost seems like our lives were profoundly changed by Turning Point. That when we stood in opposition to the governor's lockdown orders, and you stood up to declare there are two sexes, we didn't have a lot of friends. How did Turning Point assist you, or Charlie in particular? And this isn't a question he asked me to tell you. I just know we both share in common a joy of having him as a friend. How did that work for you?
Turning Point has been pivotal for me. If I'm being fully transparent here, look, I knew nothing about our civil process. I never had to take a civics course at any point in my life, not in high school, not in college. I knew nothing about our government. Incredibly concerning when I look back on it, but I knew we had 3 branches. Didn't know what they did. To be honest, I still don't really know what they do. I don't even think they know what they do half the time. I knew nothing, but what Turning Point has done for me is they've helped me develop a passion for something I didn't know I cared about, right? When I'm a 20-year-old girl, graduating college, I was actually in dental school following college, set to specialize in endodontics, which is root canals, weirdly enough. That's what I was set to do. That's what I was prepared to do. I wasn't interested in politics. Of course, as a Christian, first and foremost, I have always had the beliefs that I do. I've always aligned conservatively, of course, but I didn't care enough to ever involve myself or to be engaged because, in my perspective, that was for like the old men. That's who handles those issues, not me. But Turning Point has shown me and has really helped me build out this circle of influence. I'm on college campuses all the time now, and there's nothing more revitalizing or rewarding than getting in front of, I was at University of Wyoming not too long ago, and 600 plus students showed up to hear from me. Of course, this was a university where one of their sororities, actually it was the Kappa Kappa Gamma sorority, which I know nothing about sororities. We joked on our team and said that we were the Kappa Kappa goggles. The Kappa Kappa Gamma sorority had allowed a male into their sorority house, again, changing with the women, showering with the women, making inappropriate comments about their bodies or what undergarments they were wearing. Again, really sick stuff, so these girls show up and they're like, help us fight this. We don't know how to stand up for ourselves. And Turning Point has given me the resources and the support to be able to then help others. And again, maybe the objective was for me to inspire them, but it's those girls, those students who show up that inspire me.
I think I was listening to you speak at CPAC, and you were talking about going into the medical profession, that you never saw your trajectory being the spokesperson for this. And I love what you said. You took a public speaking class and your face would get red and you'd stammer. And here we see you, standing in front of the nation. How did the Lord equip you for that?
Man, like I said, not what I wanted to do. I majored in human health sciences and health law. Again, fully intent on pursuing dentistry. I'd taken the DAT, which is the dental admissions test, which is the miserable 4-ish hour long test to get into dental school, which covers math and reading and chemistry and biology, believe it or not. I'd scored in the top percentile nationally. I could have gone anywhere in the nation that I wanted to go to pursue dentistry. I'd received tens of thousands of dollars in scholarship funds. That is what I was prepared to do. But I was just really, really wrong in assuming that that's how God works, that he calls those to situations, those who he has already prepared. When it didn't take me long to realize it's actually the exact opposite. He prepares those who he calls. And if he brings you to something, he will certainly bring you through it, just like he did with Moses, who led the Israelites out with Aaron and his staff, just like he did with Joshua, who he promised a victory over the Canaanites, and just like he did with Esther before she was brought before the king. Which people tell me specifically that verse all the time. They'll look at me and they'll say, Esther 4:14, for such a time as this. And of course it speaks to me and it means a lot, but I think we forget the front half of that verse. Because it applies to every single one of us. Because it says, for if you remain silent, that is talking to you and you and you and you and me. For if you remain silent, you and your father's family will perish. We as Christians were not saved to be silent. And that was made very clear to me throughout this whole experience.
When we were in California and we were being censored, and the truth is never afraid of a lie, but a lie can't survive in the presence of truth. So the secular progressive left would censor us in order to put forward their propaganda. They'd censor the truth in order to put forward their lie. And so Bobby Kennedy Jr., myself, and a number of others went up to Facebook up in the Bay Area to protest, and we were out there. And it was interesting to me, there were no Christians, no pastors. But in the crowd was a woman by the name of Naomi Wolf, who many of you know as a feminist. She was left-leaning, she's pro-choice, and she started to stand in opposition to the censorship and the lockdowns and the mRNA, and she was canceled by the left, and then through her husband has had an awakening and drawing towards the things of the Lord and towards truth. And I remember she wrote an article when people were saying, I appreciate, she said a bunch of people would call her and say, I appreciate what you're doing, but I can't do that. And you're so brave. And she said, I'm not brave, you're just a wussy. She used a different word, by the way, but what she was saying is, in your circle of influence, you're just unwilling to do what's necessary because people are afraid. I ask people this all the time, how many of you took the shot because you believe in its efficacy? And how many of you took it because you didn't want to lose your job? The second is the fear of man. The first would be wisdom if you've done your homework. And I say that because all of us are scared. And I know that when they came to you, you had those scholarships, and they said to you in that locker room, and you had to go through all the reprogramming, they threatened you. Tell me the most frightening moment in all of this, where the enemy came out relentlessly to try to paralyze you with fear. Where was that epicenter?
Yeah, well, I can think of many moments very distinctly. Our university brought in an outside professional, whatever that means, who sat me down, right, a 21-year-old senior in college at the time, and taught me how to use she, her pronouns. I had to keep going through this sensitivity training until verbatim I had been properly re-educated. They brought in a different outside professional who sat us down and told us, look, girls, I know you may feel uncomfortable in the locker room, being exposed to a naked male and simultaneously exploited to a naked male, but really listen to yourself and what you're advocating for, because what you're advocating for is segregation. And you know who else advocated for segregation? Think about how we treated African Americans in the 1960s. The KKK did. Is that the side of history that you want to be on, akin to white supremacists and racists? No, so I suggest you be kind. That's what they told us. They brought in a different outside professional, which, if you haven't picked up by now, all of these outside professionals were part of the LGBTQ Education Center. They brought in a different outside professional who sat us down, and they said, girls, look, this rhetoric, if you oppose this, this movement, whether it's in the locker room, in the pool, whatever it is, somebody somewhere could harm themselves. And hear me when I say, you would be solely responsible. And that would make you responsible for a potential death, and that would make you a murderer. And you don't want to be a murderer, do you? You don't want to have blood on your hands. No, so I suggest you be inclusive. That's what they told us. That's why there have been so few pastors who have been willing to put their name and their face to this, not because my teammates agreed, not because we thought what was happening was fair or righteous or just or moral by any means, but it's because they were understandably terrified. They effectively muzzled us. I think the best way actually to describe the treatment that we received is emotional blackmail. We were emotionally blackmailed as young women into silence by these people who were, our authoritative figures. It was, I look back at that now, and I remember how scared I was. I remember all the things they told me that was going to happen. I was specifically told, no dental school will ever accept me if I speak up about this. I was specifically told I will never get a job because my employer is going to look me up and they're going to see that I'm a transphobe. It's standard practice. They're not going to hire me. I was told I was going to lose all of my lifelong friends I've had my entire life. They're not going to want to talk to you anymore. Is it worth it to you? Let me tell you, all of the things that they said were going to happen, none of them happened. The dental school, of course, I got accepted. I was in school. And I remember, of course, there was this moment where I knew I couldn't continue doing both things at the level that I wanted to, this advocacy work and doing dentistry. And so I didn't know what to do. Again, this is what I prepared for. And so I ended up kind of reluctantly calling my dental school. I was looking for someone to give me an answer. And I called the advisor and I said, hey, look, I was very vague. I had already been outspoken at this point, but I didn't want any of them to know it. And so I was very vague and I said, hey, look, something has come up in my personal life. And she stopped me immediately. She said, Riley, I know who you are. We all know who you are. We know what you do. And she said, we love what you do. And she gave me, again, when my university told me I wouldn't get accepted, she gave me, it was like God winking at me. That's how I describe it. She told me, you go fight that fight. You will have far more impact doing that than you will ever have being a dentist. We will hold your spot. We will hold your seat. We will hold all of the money that you have already spent here. And whenever you want to come back, you're welcome. But fight the fight, it's far more important than that.
The University of Kentucky said, we own you in that sense.
It was every university.
Yeah, where you carry our name on your suit, your uniform, your jerseys.
Right.
And they were going to cancel you as a result. That was another threat from them, is that correct?
Yeah, they told me, look, Riley, you signed that scholarship, and when you did, they verbatim said you gave away your rights to speak in your own personal capacity. They said, remember who you represent, like you said, whose name is across your chest and across your cap, because it doesn't say Riley. It says University of Kentucky, and understand we've already taken your stance for you. That's what they told us.
Now the NC2A has not yielded completely. They're still contending. We have the governor of Texas taking on the NC2A, and you were just testifying with them. I don't know what you're allowed to share, but to at least share with us, where is the NC2A now in regards to all this? Have they yielded to the president's authority, or are they playing semantics with the executive order?
Yeah, that's actually a perfect way to describe it. You ask where they are now, they are just as spineless and morally bankrupt as they were 3 years ago. Look, there's still a lot of work to be done. I'm glad you brought this up because I think a lot of people, maybe not the people in this room because you're tuned in, you're here, but a lot of people across the nation, in the state of Georgia, in my home state of Tennessee, which is viewed as this bastion of freedom, look, we think Donald Trump is in the White House, the war on woke has been won. Right? We're all immune to it at this point. It can't happen to me. Donald Trump is in the Oval Office. That could not be further from the truth. Right. While, of course, yes, he signed this executive order, in the grand scheme of things, this executive order doesn't mean a whole lot. I hate to burst the bubble. It doesn't absolve states from doing what they need to do. The state of Georgia actually just recently passed the Riley Gaines Act, which ultimately bars men from competing in women's sports. So it doesn't absolve states from doing what they need to do, and of course, we still need this. I mean, all of these executive orders, all of this America First agenda that we have seen President Trump issue through these EOs, we need all of those to pass through both legislative chambers to then get on his desk so he can codify it into law and make it permanent. But you're asked specifically about the NCAA. Following this executive order, Charlie Baker, the NCAA president, released a statement saying, look, we plan on announcing our new transgender participation policy tomorrow that will be in full compliance with federal law. So they announced this executive order, and it's actually in direct conflict with President Trump's beautifully and thoroughly written executive order. It resorts to things like birth certificate, which can be made fraudulent, can be changed in all but 6 states and across the world for that matter. It doesn't define terms like male and female and sex itself, which again is crazy we have to define, but what we've seen is these unelected bureaucrats go through the back door and reinterpret these words to mean what they want them to mean. So you're right, we've seen several states now take action. Just yesterday, the Attorney General of Texas had a hearing with the NCAA. They're suing them actually over this policy, saying, look, this policy is not doing what you say it's supposed to do. And so I was one of the witnesses that was there, and you know, we're going back and forth. The Texas AG's office, their attorneys get to ask me questions, then I'm cross-examined by the NCAA, and so the guy stands up and he says, look, you know, you're nothing more than a professional speech maker. You know that? I said, objection. The judge just like looked at me. He starts cracking up. He's like, ma'am, you don't get to make objections. You're the witness. I said, well, objection on the basis of hearsay. Is this, what is, can he even say that to me? And the judge, again, he's like, I've never had a witness do this. And so he said,
he hasn't dealt with Riley Gaines.
That was the kindest way I could say what I needed to say. So he said, look, you can make that objection if you plan on ruling on all the ones after. I said, perfect, give me the gavel, I'm in.
You all don't understand how difficult my job is. I'm supposed to be up here, you know, facilitating her talking, and I'm just captivated by her speaking that I forget what I'm supposed to do.
It's because I'm a professional speech maker.
Yeah. Riley, when there's 2 things I want to cover in the time we have. One was, I think it was either University of California, Davis, or Cal State, San Francisco, where they locked you in a room and wanted ransom. And they actually hit you, they accosted you. Which one was that? Yeah,
it was San Francisco State University, of course, in conjunction. I was there with Turning Point. But again, I was there to, I guess I was just naive maybe to believe that the students and community members would come with an open mind and the willingness to have their hearts softened, because they did not. They came with pitchforks and fire. And upon delivering this message, in a relatively similar forum, there wasn't a stage, but it was a classroom setting, so you know, seats all out in the audience, and there was a podium at the front and a whiteboard behind me. Upon delivering this message, a group of protesters rushed in the room, hundreds of them. And they barge to the door and they turn off the lights, so the room is pitch black, and they ambush me. Like, I'm fully accosted, I'm being pushed, I'm being shoved, I'm being punched in the face by these men who are wearing dresses, which, fortunately for me, their punches don't hurt that bad.
Just for the clarity of terms, when you say transgender male or transgender female, the word transgender means fake.
That's true.
That's all you have to do. Just
look, and I would advise you, I refuse to use the word trans woman, because again, it implies that they are some form of woman. Use clear, sex-based, distinct language, because people are desperate for it. Call it what it is, which is a man. You can use male, maybe that's the more scientific version of the same, you know, phrasing, verbiage, but use clear language, because again, when my grandma sees these headlines and it's you know, trans woman assaults 12-year-old girl in gender neutral bathroom, my grandma can't even fathom. She's like, wait, trans woman. is that a man who identifies as a woman? Is that a woman who identifies as a man? It doesn't make it any easier to decipher when they're using she, her pronouns to describe this male, yet they then have his mugshot, and it is clearly a male. So use again, distinct, clear language, because people are desperate for it.
So you got out of there.
After being held for ransom for nearly 5 hours. All the while, again, this is in San Francisco, so the police were being held for ransom with me. I'm like looking at the officers, hour 3, hour 4 in this room, through the middle of the night. It's not midnight. Can't you do something? To which the officer said, no. No, we can't do anything. We're not allowed to do anything, because we're not allowed to be seen as anything other than an ally to that community, or else we'll lose our jobs. Again, the same community who's on the other side of the door calling these officers racist pigs for protecting a white girl like me. The dean of students ends up showing up. Again, it's the middle of the night, and starts negotiating with the students how much I owed each of them to be able to leave, which the price they ended up agreeing upon was $10 each, which makes me mad because I think I'm worth more than $10. But eventually I was able to get out, but only after, about 40 officers had to form a diamond around me, and ultimately we then pushed out, not because the students dispersed, but the most remarkable part, I'll be quick, about this whole thing was what happened the next day, because the vice president of student affairs at the university sent out a university-wide email. Of course, this garnered national attention, so they had to address it. So they sent out an email to the entire student body, all faculty, all professors, and in this email, they said, we are so proud of our brave students for handling Riley Gaines in the manner that they did. We know how deeply traumatic her presence is on this campus, and so here's some counseling resources for you all. Take the day off of school. Just know that we see you, we love you, we hear you, and we stand with you.
Wow.
You know, in Nazi Germany, it wasn't Hitler and his victims. It was Hitler and a complicit nation that agreed to lie to each other.
Yeah.
Those officers swore to defend the Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic, and they didn't want to lose their jobs. Those are cowards. Read Revelation 21. Very special place in the lake of fire for cowards. And here's a young woman at a state university whose life is being threatened, and they did nothing. And I say this because we have a president who was facing 700 years in prison. And we were just talking about the assassination attempt in Butler. In 4% of all of Trump's rallies would he use PowerPoints, and it was only indoors where they could be seen. And he'd always do it at the end of his very lengthy messages. And in Butler, when he's getting off the plane, he insists for that one slide. They said, Mr. President, it's outdoors. We can't. And he goes, get the slide. And he insisted and insisted and insisted. And 7 minutes into his speech, he calls for the slide. He's never done that in any, we're talking, this doesn't happen. And he points to the slide, and the bullet grazes his ear. And I say this because when they canceled us in California, and they gave me a lifetime ban on YouTube, and they canceled freedom of speech, they tried to cancel Riley. Christians were silent in California. I was thankful for a self-professing homosexual by the name of Peter Thiel, who invested in Rumble to give us another platform because he understands the power of the freedom of speech. It wasn't a pastor or Christians who did it. Then we had a polygamous or polyamorous guy by the name of Elon Musk, who brought back X, Twitter, and that's the ability for the freedom of speech. We have folks like Trump leading the way, but Christians with moral pietism want to make themselves feel better by decrying the fact he's been 3 times married and twice divorced. If it wasn't for President Trump, if it wasn't for folks like Peter Thiel or Elon Musk, Riley wouldn't have a platform. There weren't any people there standing on their behalf, and I'm just so grateful. In spite of the lack of support, this brave young woman has been standing since day one. And I have to tell you, at 60 years of age, I am humbled, I'm a bit embarrassed, and I'm sorry for my generation creating that for you. But it's not going to happen anymore as long as I'm alive. Ladies and gentlemen, the bravest woman in America, Riley Gaines.